So let's talk a little bit about why eating organic is so important. You know, I hear so much people, they say, oh, it's too expensive. And, you know, I just want to say a new report just came out just this past month in May from the University of Montreal that says that ADHD is now linked to high pesticide exposure. And researchers measured the levels of organophosphates in the urine of over 1,000 U.S. children. And those with above average levels had roughly twice the odds of getting a diagnosis of ADHD, according to the study. And it used to be that they just measured farm workers, but now this is the first study to measure average U.S. kids. So tell us, what's another good reason? You know,
Well, you know, having been in the industry for so long, I think between Helge and I, we've got
140 years.
140
More on your side.
Yeah, there'd have to be a lot more on my side. I always came from the point. Now, Beth, your show is about leading a supernatural life, and I read Rachel Carson's book, and I read many books around that time that were talking about how it was affecting the environment, and so I couldn't help but ask myself, if all these chemicals in our food are affecting the environment this way, how are they affecting our bodies? And so exactly the same questions that you ask on your show all the time. But as I learned more about organic agriculture, it wasn't so much about what it was taking away. It was what it was adding to our lives. And organic agriculture, as Helge has, when he's been on different shows that I've had, has been, you know, it's about building the soil. It's about creating a soil that is full of life that in turn creates healthier plants, and I believe in turn creates healthier people because of ingesting healthier food. Like that have organic has been proven to have higher antioxidant levels in the food. And that comes from the fact that because organic plants have to work harder for their nutrients because they're not given it synthetically, they actually put stress on the plant. And when it puts stress on the plant produces antioxidants. And so that higher antioxidant value that the plants are producing to protect itself, we get in our food, which actually helps, as you know, with cancer prevention or all the other things that antioxidants are good for.
Right. I've heard that like an organic apple has, 6 times the antioxidant or 20 times. I mean, there's some enormous difference in vitamins, minerals, all that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that can only be a good thing for.
Well, that's a very positive thing.
Well, yeah. And Helge, what do you
Yeah, I mean, nutrient density in organic foods at this point is undisputed. Non-organic foods, grown in the field are much more waterlogged. They get synthetic pesticides and fertilizers, so they grow quicker without any competition, and that creates the plant to grow faster than they naturally would. They're basically overfed. And besides what synthetic fertilizers do to the waterways and all that, but just in terms of produce itself, waterlogged produce literally means you're paying for water. And, we're paying for water already at this point,
Dearly,
as in
right.
bottled water and in many other ways. But, the nutrient density of organic foods has been studied over and over and over again. And there are thousands of comparisons where organic always came out higher. But it's really... The question of organic food goes much further than that. You can trace basically every challenge that we face as a society back to our relationship to soil, back to the way we grow food.
Right. I know that's your passion. I'm very interested in soil because I don't know very much about
incredible.
it. You buy bags of it in the store. That's kind of
and
what I know.
I don't even grow anything. I grow awareness. Mark at least has some avocado trees in his backyard. I tried tomatoes and it just didn't turn out well. But it's incredible when you unlock that chapter and really look at it that environmental challenges that we face, polluted soil, air, and water. Agriculture is a gigantic contributor to that. The amount of pesticides we use and synthetic fertilizers, we can't dose them, so we over-fertilize. It all ends up in the waterways. The reliance on petrochemicals and oils and gas for pesticides and fertilizers, again, the CO2 emissions through agriculture alone, food production contributes about 1/3 of all CO2 emissions to global warming because of shipping and, again, pesticide use. It's environmentally, it's completely unsustainable the way we grow food. If you look at personal health, there are many experts that say you can basically trace every single disease that we have in the society back to the way we eat.
Yes.
Whether or not it can be cured through that is another conversation entirely. But most, if not all, illnesses are somehow related to the way we feed ourselves. Then you look at the economy. We have, over the last 30 years, we have lost about 400 family farms a week. That's 56 farms a day, or one farm every 26 minutes. And with it goes the local economy. With it goes the culture of food production, all the associated businesses of local family farms gone forever. And actually so much so that now, a few years ago, the agency, the federal agency, that the Census Bureau that counts statistics when it comes to labor, kicked agriculture off the list because it says statistically it's insignificant. So our disconnect from soil and our disconnect from the way we grow food has created the challenges that we are facing as a society today. And because of it, if we switch to local organic, family farmed, small scale production, which over and over shows that it's the most productive form of producing food, we can also turn it around. That's why it's so hopeful. We are seeing this amazing movement right now.
Now, what percentage of farms are organic in the country right now?
Well, food production overall, the numbers go anywhere. Mark knows that too. Between 4 to 5%.
Organic, or what the total, or all are organic. The whole total is it's only like 2 or 3%.
Is that all?
Well, I always err on the on the more hopeful side.
No, and I do the same thing too, Helge. But I was actually thinking it was higher. I thought it was closer to 5, but actually, the most recent reports I've seen, it said it's more like 3.
Yeah, so we had an economic crisis last year where some people decided that was one thing they could not support in that moment. Making the organic choice, because it does look more expensive on the shelves, even though if you really look at all the tax money that's involved, it's the most expensive form is non-organic agriculture. But the overall food market in the U.S., it's about 500 billion, and we are at about 30 billion, 20 to 40 billion, depending on who you're asking, which is tiny, but the way it has grown is rapid. It had double-digit growth numbers over the last 20 years, every year. In 1980, this was an $80 million industry. Now we are at 30 billion. So
right. So it's hopeful. But well, I just want to get back to soil for a minute. So what's missing from our soil? I know that there's trace minerals. I've heard stuff about that our soil has been overused and it's lacking what aside from trace minerals, what else is it missing?
Well, it's missing. It depends on which soil you're talking about. You can grow in completely sterile soil, which is what's done in non-organic agriculture. You can grow any plant basically with NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those 3 ingredients we found will let a plant grow and produce a piece of produce that looks like a normal piece of produce. We do know, though, that 30 or so minerals and soil nutrients are needed for optimal plant health, and we know that over 50, and that number increases every year with more and more studies, are essential for human health. So whatever is not in the soil either needs to be added synthetically or will just not be in the produce. And if it's not in the produce, it's not in our diets.
Right.
It's that simple.
If you're just joining us, I'm talking with Mark Mulcahy and Helge Hellberg. I'm Beth Greer, and this is Your Supernatural Life here on Green 960. So it's not in our bodies if we're not getting the nutrients from the produce. So, do you recommend, or are people suggesting that we add like micro minerals? I mean, is it?
I don't recommend it because I do believe that, for example, there are 600 bioflavonoids in a piece of lemon peel, right, that we have identified. And 20 years ago, we didn't really know what bioflavonoids were. So it's fair to say that it's possible that in 5 years or in 10 years, we know there are 3,000.
Wow.
So as we understand the world of nutrition and soil, same in the soil, there are billions of microorganisms in a teaspoon full of soil, of healthy soil, billions. There's more biological life in a shoebox full of soil than on the entire surface of the U.S. northern continent.
That's extraordinary.
And so what's important when we buy supplements from a health food store is to realize that and I'm not saying they're not effective, but I'm saying that the way nature presents itself is in this gigantic net of relationships, right? And we don't even understand the components of the relationship, nor do we understand the relationships themselves. So when you take bioflavonoids, when you take vitamin C, ascorbic acid in a pill form, and there are no bioflavonoids part of that, as a lemon would come with, hundreds, which change every week with the ripening of the fruit. You spend your money on ascorbic acid that says 2,000 milligrams of what's needed, but you might not be able to absorb any of it.
Because it doesn't have the coexisting.
That's right. We need the relationships.
Right.
This is all. This movement is a movement about relationships. And Mark, if you want to add to that.